Hello everyone, welcome to this video in which we're going to be talking about continuing with our sales and operations planning series. In the last video, we looked at what exactly is sales and operations planning, what is predictable variability, how do you manage predictable variability on the supply side and on the demand side. And one of the things we saw on the demand side was to offer promotions, right? So that's exactly what we're going to be looking at here. What I have here is uh, the original aggregate plan that we created. This was from the lecture file. This is an example where we had Red Tomato was the name of the company, and Red Tomato Tools were making different kinds of tools, and we aggregated them all together. The material cost was $10 per unit, inventory holding cost was $2 per unit per month, marginal cost and hiring cost was 300, layoff cost was 500. So we had all of this information. Now we are going to see. So we'll assume that Green Thumb is the retailer that sells Red Tomato Tools, and they want to figure out when to offer promotions, right? So if you go back to the data that we have, you'll notice that this is the demand for Red Tomato Tools. So in January they have 1600, February 3000, 3200, 38, 2200, 2200. So this is the demand that they usually see. So this is the base case. So aggregate plan original. I'm going to rename it as base case. So this is the base case. In the base case, you start with 80 workers. In the first month, you lay 16 of them off. Then you end with 64 workers, and that's the number of workers you're going to keep for the rest of the time. You are not doing any. Oh, actually, I don't think we have. Let me see if I can run this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is it. We are not doing any overtime. We are producing 2,560 units, and yeah, and total cost is $422,660. So one other piece of information that we have right now is on revenue. We are going to sell we are going to sell the items at $40 per unit. So sales price is $40 per unit. On this with colors. I do want with all borders, right? So we are selling them all for $40 per unit, which means that the revenue will be equal to so it's just $40 times each of these numbers. So we can just say $40 times the sum of all of these, sum of total demand. That should also work, right? So sum of you, we are selling all of these items at $40. So $640,000. That's the profit. That's the revenue that you make. But because I'm going to be changing the sales price in some of these months, because we are giving out promotions, so we're going to be changing the sales price. So to make my life easier, I'm going to write revenue instead as the sum product of demand values and the sales price, right? Okay, I think I messed something up. So it's the sum product of the demand values and the sales price. Right now, because everything is $40, this is the base case. Nothing's gonna change. That's good for $640,000. So in fact, we don't need. Let me delete that. So profit will be equal to the difference. So this is how much money we expect to make, 217,000. So it's $340. That's the net profit in the base case, right? So this is when we are not doing any sales, we're not doing any promotions or anything like that. But we do see that April is the month where we have the highest demand, and January is the month where we'll have the lowest demand. So what we'll do is we'll look at two cases. In one case, we are going to um, offer sales during January. In another case, we look at what happens if you offer sales during April, and then we'll compare the two situations together. Now, to do this, we in the previous video we did talk about two things. We talked about demand going up by itself because market share increases, or you capture demand from one of your competitors, right? And also there is the idea of forward buy. Forward buy is when demand people were going to buy a product anyway. So in this case, Red Tomato Tools anyway, but because you're offering promotion at a certain time, they are buying it right now rather than buying it at some point of time in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, create a copy, go to the end. I'm going to call it January promotion, right? So in this case, again, there are a couple of pieces of information that we need to have. The first piece of information is called consumption, and the second one is forward buy, right? So we're going to look at consumption and forward buy. So we'll begin with a value of consumption of 10% and forward buy being 20%. So what does this mean? So we'll talk about that in a second. Let me write these as percentages. So what does it mean for consumption to be 10%? So let's say that we offer, we're doing promotion in January. It means that because you're offering promotion in January, the demand in January increases by 10% automatically because, well, you are selling it at a lower price. So people who are going to buy a competitor or not buying this product at all are going to buy this product. So demand will go up by 10%. That's one thing. And then forward buy. So we saw what forward buy was. So what you're saying here with forward buy is that whenever we offer promotion in any month, it could be January or April, then 20% of demand from the next 2 months gets transferred to the current month. So if I offer a promotion in January, then 20% of demand from February is instead realized in January, and 20% of demand from March is also realized in January, right? So demand sort of shifts over. And the other thing to remember is that the sales price is going to be lower. So what we'll do is we'll assume that a promotion is in January. So I'm going to mark this. So let me color this. I'm going to color this with, let's do red. Maybe that's a bit too bright. Let's do red, yeah. So let's assume that we are going to sell the items for $39 during January, right? So demand is going to be $39 during January. And demand for January, February, and March are all going to change. Demand for January is going to change because we are going to have a 10% general increase in demand, and then 20% of demand from February and March are going to get moved to January. So let's calculate that. So demand, let me copy this. I'm gonna paste this here. I'm gonna call this old demand, and this will be new demand, just to, so these are the old demand values, right? So this new demand value, so new demand in January is going to be old demand with a 10% increase in it. So I'm going to increase that by 10%. So plus 10%, right? So it's a 10% increase in demand plus 20% of demand from these two. So 20% times the demand here plus 20% times the demand here, right? So 20% of demand from February and 20% demand of March now get moved to January. So that's what happens with forward buy. And yeah, so the demand for January now becomes 3,000 because it was 1,600 originally. It becomes 3,000. Now let's look at demand for February. So February demand went down. So it used to be 3,000, but 20% of demand now gets taken care of in January. So demand is going to be 20% less. going to be 80% of what it was before. And the same goes for March. It's going to be 80% of what it was before, right? So let me just call it period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the old demand values. Now, these demand values are going to remain the same for April, May, and June. They're going to remain the same as what they were. It's only January, February, and March changes. So again, January changes because that's when you're doing the promotion. So there's a 10% general increase in demand plus 20% demand from February and 20% demand from March got moved to January. So that's what you have. So with these new demand values, you'll notice that they sort of kind of have flattened out a little bit. There's 3,000 here with 20. So everything is between 2,200 and 3,800. Before it was between 1,600 and 1,300. So the range has definitely reduced a lot. So has the variability. So with this, once we've made this change, I'm going to go back to data and solver. I'm going to click on solve again. And now I have a new solution, right? In this new solution, again, the number of people you're hiring and firing is remaining the same, but the overall costs and all have changed. So if you consider the base case, the profit of was $217,340. With the promotion in January, it is $216,940. Now, definitely the profit is going to go up because you see a 10% increase in demand one way or the other. So this definitely is going to be higher. But the reason why it can potentially be lower is because 20% of demand from February and March got moved to January, and we are selling the item at $39 during January rather than at $40. So definitely the revenue would have gone down there. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So that's that. Let me just look at something. I-10. Okay, good. All right, good. Now, this is what happens when you have promotion in January. So let's see what happens when you have promotion in April. So again, I'm going to copy the first sheet over. Actually, you know what? I'm going to copy the January promotion over because it has the whole new demand, old demand thing going on. Right? This is January, April. Okay, so with promotion in April, now the sales price here will still be $40. Let me, and the sales price in April is going to be $39, right? This is going to be $39. Okay. Now, so demand for January is going to go back to being what it was. The same goes for demand for February and March. They are not going to change. But the demand for April, May, and June are going to change. So demand for April will now become the old demand for April times the increase in consumption, right? Plus 20% of demand from May and June also get moved. So it'll be 20% of demand from May plus 20% of demand from June. They all got moved to April. So that's the demand there. And the demand for May will now be 20% less, right? The 80% of what it was before. And the same goes for this. It will be 80% of what it was before, right? So that's it. So that's the only change that we had to make. The sales price changes and the new demand values changes. With that, I'm just going to go back to solver, click on solve. There you go, found a solution. You'll notice that this time, in fact, we have only laid off 15 workers and we're keeping 65 workers. And you'll notice that if you look at the profit values, our overall profit values have actually gone down. $209,256 as opposed to $216,000. In fact, the profit has gone down from the base case of 217,000. So, in fact, even with the January promotion, the profit in the January promotion is 216,000 as opposed to $217,340, right? So that's the idea here. So this video is already 15 minutes long, so I'm going to stop this. I'm going to continue this in the next video. So in this video, we saw what happens at January and April promotions. We calculated them using the solver. What we'll do in the next video is we'll look at the solutions and see what they mean and look at a few more variations, right?